a Heroes Welcome podcast.
Okay.
Hello, everyone.
Welcome to an unplanned, unscripted episode of a Heroes Welcome podcast. I'm your co-host, Maria Diego, and I'm joined by my lovely co-host,
Liliana Balan. And we started actually, it was unplanned, as Maria just shared, because I was sharing an experience and how the political environment is dictating the way that we respond. And then we're noticing one more time all those biases that we all as professionals have, even in mental health, which I think that's why it's so hard for all of us to make sense of. Will you agree, Maria, that how is it that we can be aware of trauma, yet most of us are actually causing trauma in spaces?
Yes, yeah. So part of what triggered our initial conversation was an unfortunate incident and situation that you found yourself in. But it isn't the only time you have found yourself in that situation, nor is it the only time that in a professional setting, professionals behave really unprofessional, but let's just say disgusting towards each other. And the toll that it takes on you deciding whether that's a space you need to remain in, or do you walk away? And so what we ended up started talking about was this idea of, is it our responsibility and our duty to take on the discomfort, the stress, the toll that it takes being in situations where we are attacked, where we are questioned, where we are dismissed and belittled by other professionals? Do we need to take that on so that our voice is heard and that those groups are not surrounded by yes men and yes women? Or do you choose, for the betterment of your mental health, to not engage in those spaces? And what does that mean for you, but also for the larger profession?
Yeah. So all of it is true, right? Especially like for you and me, they were being very vocal about our health issues, which is part of the laughing that we were doing because yeah, I'm not out of the woods. You're not out of the woods. And an appointment with my doctor this week was like, can we monitor your stress? And I started laughing. So like, are you aware of the political environment? How are we going to do that as a Latina migrant mental health therapist who is constantly dealing with microaggressions, but also is dealing with dynamic disabilities that are being dismissed in our field because, but you look fine.
Right. Not only do you look fine, Liliana, you have a voice and you're not quiet. I think that's another assumption about dynamic disabilities and those people who are quote unquote sick, is that if you don't look sick, then you're not sick, and if you're showing up to meetings and being vocal, then you're not sick. And those of us our listeners that live with chronic conditions, we know we have to do those things anyway. We have to show up anyway. We all live with a degree of acceptable pain or illness and still have to function.
Yeah.
And do you need to decide? I mean, you specifically, Liliana, for this situation, but our listeners in general, we have to decide: is this worth the toll on my health? Because sometimes the answer is going to be yes.
Yeah.
And sometimes the answer will be, this is not the battle I'm willing to fight any longer. And how do you make that decision? Which battles do you pick? And then how do you get right with yourself for the ones that you walk away from?
So I think for our listeners, right, in this moment, either pause the podcast and then write down what are the heels, what are the values personally and professionally as mental health therapists that you are willing to become an ally and to fight for. And not the ally of hashtag, because that became really popular
Yes.
during George Floyd, which a lot of people tend to dismiss because it's a trend, right? Like using certain words or but don't tell me you're an ally when you witness things and then you're quiet.
Yeah.
Do not
Yeah.
tell me you're an ally by going and putting a hashtag or something on your social media. What is truly the work that you're doing? Right. So Maria and I talk about how we hold each other accountable or
Mhm.
like, okay, I said this. Give me your perspective. What are my blind spots? Right. But that's the relationship that you and I have where we can call each other's bullshit or lack of
Well,
humility.
and it's necessary, right? Part of the conversation was also we cannot surround ourselves with people who only think and agree with us.
No.
That's not growth. That's not safe. That's not healthy.
Mm-mm.
Um, that's actually really dangerous, right? Because then we become siloed and we believe that we're the only ones that are right and we're getting that feedback. Um, so that becomes really, really dangerous.
Mhm.
So thinking about, your values, the hills that you're willing to not necessarily die on, but you're willing to do the work. You're willing to acknowledge the sacrifices that you have to take to be on that hill,
Mhm.
and you find that there's value enough in making that choice.
Yeah.
Because you can't be on all the hills. You
Oh,
can't.
by the way, shout out to Norca, one of my friends here in Colorado. So I have a lunch with her, and she says the world is dealing with cancer,
Mm.
and I love her analogy in that moment. And she said, and you're becoming the forefront on holding that cancer so it doesn't get spread, which is beautiful work. And how are you going to take care of yourself so that you don't die from that cancer? I was like, damn, girl, I don't even know how to answer that right now. Okay, but that analogy fits perfectly because we're living in an environment right now where we have given permission to belittle people,
Mm-hmm.
to discriminate against people,
Mm-hmm.
and we have given permission for people to say really hurtful things about others. So there's no, I see you as the human, is research says, or the administration says.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the common language that I keep hearing over and over again.
Yeah, we're losing touch with our humanity.
That's exactly it, right? So you and I, Maria, are known for talking about the human aspect of how will this impact you. So I think as mental health therapists, we understand because of our clients the impact that it has from the dynamic disability, a political environment, social status, financial status, like it's all these things that we're dealing with. And what I'm becoming aware, and tell me if it's the same for you, which I think it is that not everyone deals with the populations that we deal with. Actually, there's a lot of mental health therapists who have leadership positions, and therefore they're not having this experience, this shared experience of working with clients. And that's where the disconnect happens,
Yeah,
right? So
absolutely.
you and I are in it, and therefore this empathy is highlighted,
Mm-hmm.
which is beautiful and it sucks.
Yeah. Yes, because I think we've talked a little bit before about how the place and where the decisions are being made, they're being made by people who are not in the front lines.
Yeah.
And that disconnect has been more and more evident over the last year, but even more so in the last couple of months, that
Yeah.
decisions are being made without truly understanding the impact on the frontline workers, their clients, their caseloads. And that lack of empathy and humanity comes through when it feels like decisions are being made without context.
Mhm. So with all of this being discussed out loud, right? The invitation to our listeners is not everything is so dark. Feels like it. And what is it that is coming up for you? What is it that you're becoming aware of? Because we can talk about, I have these privileges. Yeah, great. And then what? What is the follow up with that? And if you don't have privileges, okay, great. And then what comes down after that? We all have voices. The difference right now is that we have a podcast, so we have a platform for you and me. Also, we have privileges, the privilege of our profession, our education. It can be either financial. All of us are still working, so obviously we're not rich. There will be signs, people, when Maria and I win the lottery. But we're not telling you. There will be signs. Uh, but there's all these layers of privileges that we may have, yet we're still impacted either because of current policies that are being in place, by being born females,
Mhm.
by having disabilities, chronic issues, um, by not being in those rooms where those decisions are being made. Not that we have to be invited, there's others. But when those decisions are being made and truly a diversity of voices are not there.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So I mean, the question is for you, Liliana, but also for our listeners. You have to decide which battles you're willing to take on and come up with a self-care plan to continue to keep yourself healthy while battling these cancers that you've decided to target.
Yeah, right. So I was sharing with Maria, and hopefully all of you are doing some of your own work. What would that look like? It's different for everyone, okay? But in my work, it's not only attending all the medical appointments that if you're dealing with chronic, most of our agendas are doctor's appointments.
Yeah.
It's insane if you look at our agendas. So it's attending to doctor's appointments. And then in this case, I was sharing with Maria, and that's why this prompt is a doctor appointment that I had yesterday told me, can you monitor your stress? Which that's why Maria and I started laughing because now I have to monitor my stress level, which all of us should do, plus other things that I have to monitor. And in that, deciding what room deserves me at the table. That sounds very cocky. Yet, what room am I volunteering? Because most of these leadership positions, you fucking volunteer. The union, so they don't pay you. You're
Nope.
losing income. They said, but it will add to your resume. I'm sorry. My resume is so fucking impressive. Maria's as well. And that's not humble. I'm very aware of it, but I'm going to take Ileana here when she called me out and say, can you not be embarrassed of
Yeah.
your resume? So, what room deserves us?
Mhm.
What room for our listeners deserves you? Not because they agree with you, but because of the values and the growth and the decisions that are being made.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So for me, is I'm truly debating, do I continue at the tables that I'm sitting on, not because they're not agreeing with me, but because the level of stress and
Mhm.
microaggressions that I'm dealing with.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's a continuous conversation, right? Now, as new opportunities arise, you have to kind of take stock in, is this going to be worth the toll on my health, on my mental health, on my income?
Mhm.
Um, and we need disruptors, right? Like we need those voices at the table because if everyone walks away and only the yes men and yes women are left, things get worse.
Yeah.
Um, and maybe only taking on two rooms at a time, a room at a time, whatever is manageable, because you can't be in all the rooms, you can't be on all the hills,
Mhm.
um, while still trying to like have a life
Mhm.
and a functioning body and mental health that's better than the world on fire.
Yeah.
So yeah, and in encouraging our listeners that a lot of the time the sacrifices can be worth it because your voices do need to be heard. You do need to have a seat at the table. And sometimes the costs outweigh the benefits, and that's okay to acknowledge that and to take good care of you.
Yeah. Which, for all of you who are listening, this is Maria talking to me because I tend not to listen to that part. Because I'm like, I can do it. I can go fight. And truly, it's because my whole life I've been an activist and I have to learn to rest. Some of you are familiar because I have shared this over and over again. I listen to Dolores Huerta. She's an activist. And she's the one who's telling us learn how to rest.
Yeah.
And I do not know how to rest.
No, it's a difficult, I mean, that's a whole nother episode that we want to unpack all of that. But it is a difficult lesson for us to learn on so many levels.
Yeah.
And rest is activism, because if you burn out or
Yeah.
if you make yourself so unwell that you can't keep doing what you're doing,
Yeah.
then you're not good to anybody or the cause.
Yeah. And financially, oh my God, between all the doctor's appointments and now my therapist, because she loves me, being pissed for what I'm sharing, it's expensive.
It is expensive. It's expensive to be well in our country
Yeah.
anyway. Just if you have a healthy body, it's expensive to be well. If you don't have a healthy body, it's really expensive to try to be well.
Yeah.
Um, and again, that should be fuel for the decision of which rooms am I going to take that seat and take the cost of being there versus, yeah, this is not worth the toll it's taking on my well-being.
Mhm. So obviously, with this spontaneous podcast episode, we don't have the answers for you. We don't even have the answers for ourselves. We are exploring this out loud with all of you, but our hope is that you take time to explore, to integrate this information, and then evaluate what are the rooms that I need to be a part of in order to create change, especially when you have privileges.
Mhm.
Two is what is the work that you're doing to truly become an ally in those rooms? Not to the privileges and not to discrimination, but to make a difference, especially in our field. And then hopefully you'll reach out to us and share your experiences, which we're pretty sure they're not that indifferent than the ones that we just share, especially in our field. Not only because what you're listening and containing, but because you're aware of what is happening. And if you're not aware, man, I want to be in your life. Um, but it's an invitation of, can you share your experiences? Can you share what is it that you're finding out in regards to what you find about you, your advocacy skills, and then the rooms that you are being a part of in order for us to see the good too,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Not everything is so dark. Help us see
yeah.
the good, help us see the light.
Absolutely. There's a lot of good being done. It's easy to get out overshadowed by all of the dark, but there's a lot of good being done. They feel really small when everything else feels so big.
Yeah.
And I think the other takeaway is if you decide that this is a room that you want to be in, find support. Even if
Yes.
they're not in the room with you, find support to say, like, I can't believe this just happened. How do I address this? How do I fill my cup because that meeting was so depleting for me? You don't have to do it alone, even if you are alone at the table.
Yeah. Beautiful. Beautiful. So thank you for listening to us in this spontaneous episode as we were sharing and we're like, this is an episode.
Because we also recognize this is a universal experience. This is not just our experience. And some of the feedback we have gotten about the podcast is it's just nice to know that they're not alone in this.
Yeah. We're going to start singing Michael Jackson, You're Not Alone. If it got stuck on your mind, is because as soon as I think in songs. Uh,
You. So
and
before Liliana breaks out into song, we'll let you all go. But yeah, please take a couple minutes to decide for yourself. And it's okay to decide, oh, I said yes to this, but I need to change it to a no for now. And take good care of yourselves until next time.
thank you. We'll see you next time.
Till then.